Yeah, well, thank you very much. Recording in progress, series. Happy to be back now with Massachusetts State Senate Minority Leader Bruce Tarr. Senator Tarr, welcome back.
Rick, it's great to be back with you. And, you know, as we're recording right now, it's a wonderful Friday afternoon here in Massachusetts and on the North Shore.
This weather is absolutely crazy. And I just saw, I mean, it's 70-something degrees predicted today. The weekend's going to cool off. But I saw there's something called a bomb cyclone ready to hit the West Coast. There are 3 consecutive storms coming in. And Senator, they're calling for, besides a ton of rain, which I guess is great for California, they're calling for 5 to 9 feet of snow in the Sierra Nevadas. So I've got to get my skis tuned up.
My goodness, Rick, I think you better get the wax out right now. And, you know, go out in the backyard. It's a nice day right now. You can start waxing outside and you can be ready for whatever comes our way.
I think that's a great idea. Well, Senator, what's going on, as usual, from the Statehouse? And you are involved in a couple of bills that I think are incredibly important, as you've educated me about them to a degree. And let's get started on them. The first one you want to mention has to do with the military and families coming and going.
So it's Senate Bill 2502, Rick, which we actually passed by unanimous vote yesterday in the formal session of the Senate. And it tackles a problem, or begins to address a problem, which really is important. And it has to do with military families that come in and out of Massachusetts because of their duty assignments at Massachusetts bases. And it tries to get a couple of different issues. The first is the issue of military spouses who come into the state because their spouse has been transferred here, and they have their own profession. They could be a teacher, they could be a nurse. Oftentimes, those are professions that require a license from the state, and that license can take quite a while to get. But these are families that are coming in through military orders, and they may leave before an extremely long period of time. And so what this bill does is direct the relevant state agencies to expedite the issuance of those licenses. So again, a teaching certificate, a nursing license, things of that nature, which are really important to be able to help these families who are making so much sacrifice on our behalf through their service to the nation. And in addition to that, Rick, the other component of the bill that's really important to focus on, and there are several, but the other one that's really important to focus on are military students. So students coming into Massachusetts. We know that oftentimes a military student or a student of a military family winds up going to many, many schools during their career. And they deserve help being able to assimilate into their new school and being able to navigate all that it takes to be successful in that school. And so this bill sets up the idea that we're going to have Purple Star schools, and schools can be recognized for that if they do things like assign a liaison person to help those students and make other accommodations to be able to help them assimilate into their new student body and do things to be able to give them some extra support, some extra resources so that they can prosper as students along with the other students that are in their class.
There are a couple of layers to this onion, Senator, I want to mention, and one is that the second part you talked about is so important because as an Army brat, there were several places that we went where it was not an Army-based school situation. And so as a kid coming from Massachusetts, first to second grade, and you're moving into Fort Benning, Georgia, and you're moving into Columbus, Georgia, your accent is noted right away from the locals. And you know, the same thing happens when you move to Lewisburg, North Carolina. You're noticed immediately, and I'm betting the opposite is true here when I think of Major Chance when his family moved to Gloucester when I was a senior in high school. They're noticed because they're totally outsiders. It's so obvious. So I think that's a wonderfully noble thing to recognize and to help these kids do it. As you mentioned, I went to 13 different schools in 12 years.
You know, Rick, we were hearing in floor debate yesterday a lot about the experiences of students who do go to multiple schools. And we were hearing statistics about 13, 14, 15 plus schools over the educational career of students that are in military families. So it's an incredibly important thing to do for a number of reasons. And one of those reasons, Rick, is that the Department of Defense is now using these types of things, measurements of how you care for military families, not just the service member themselves, in making decisions about where to make investments in military bases. And we know that in Massachusetts, we have a number of bases that are very important to our economy, very important to local employment. And so these would be good things to do in and of themselves, but they're also good because they make us more competitive when the federal government looks at basing decisions and making investments into the installations that we already have and maybe potential installations. And one of those, Rick, under contemplation is a base for the newly developed Space Force. And Massachusetts actually is in the running to have that base. And so these investments not only will make a difference in the lives of families, but also in making us more competitive for those kind of things.
Well, you're talking my language when you talk space. One final thought on this, Senator. The licensures and certifications and so on, are they fairly standard among the states? Because it would seem to me, if I get a certificate in Massachusetts and I move to New Hampshire, or I move to Connecticut, or I even move to North Carolina, you know, the qualifications would seem to me to be fairly consistent across the spectrum.
You know, it's a great question, Rick, and it came up yesterday in debate. So first of all, oftentimes, yes, the qualifications are very, very similar. And in the second instance, Massachusetts law already requires that if you're coming from another state and you're getting a transfer, that your qualifications must be similar. So that already gets examined so that we don't have someone that would be coming in getting a Massachusetts license that would be underqualified because of a lesser qualification requirement in other states. So number one, we do pick that up already in existing Massachusetts law. And number two, experience has taught that most often the qualifications are very similar.
Excellent, excellent. Really glad to hear that. Now, the second bill that you've been working on has to do with, again, with education. And I'm really into this, especially when I read about what Texas is doing. I went to high school in Texas. And Massachusetts is taking a look at it a little bit differently.
So, yeah, Rick, Senate Bill 2525 is one of which I'm a co-sponsor, and there are a number of co-sponsors. It's a very, very bipartisan bill, as is the military licensure bill. And this one has to do with education about genocide. And simply put, it requires that in Massachusetts, there will be curriculum in middle school and high school about genocide. In terms of educating students about it. And it's part of the rubric that we already have in terms of statutes that require the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education to develop curriculum. This bill would add a requirement for genocide education. And it also, Rick, sets up a fund so that folks could contribute to be able to help pay for the development of that curriculum, the development of that education. But there is a caveat. And that fund has a requirement that any contributions be vetted to make sure there are not conditions attached by the donor, which might cause an undue influence on the development of the curriculum. But this is something that I think is long overdue. Again, genocide, and I said this on the floor, is something that's unthinkable, and it's something that's horrific, and it's something that's difficult for us to think about. But that is not, and those are not, reasons not to think about genocide, not to think about the role that it's played in the history of the world, and not to do everything we can to prevent it from ever happening again. And in my humble opinion, one of the main reasons we have public education is to enable students to fulfill their potential and go out and be good stewards of this democracy. And that stewardship, in my opinion, is made even stronger when you have an understanding of some of the horrific acts that have caused so much human suffering in the history of the world.
Well, it's well spoken. And from an American point of view, education-wise, it's always easy to point the finger elsewhere. You know, we look at genocide in Europe, we look at it in Africa, we look at it in other places. And I'm just becoming aware over the last couple of decades of our own involvement as, and I say our very loosely, on how the United States was founded. And I hope that there's a redress with respect to the indigenous people, because I hesitate now even to call them American Indians. We're not the West Indies. Columbus did not discover the West Indies. And even the word America, implies if you say Native Americans, well, excuse me, they were here before America was called America. So as an educator, Senator, I'm hoping that it opens up new vistas, if you will, so that people understand. And it's not to say that it's our fault as people who live today, but it is, as you say, something that we need to know about, to learn about, and be sure it doesn't happen again, because as you know, this planet is getting smaller and smaller.
You're absolutely right, Rick, and your perspective as an educator is important. And I've had the benefit of your skills as an educator when I used to sit in your classroom, which is a little bit longer ago than probably either one of us would like to recall. But the point is that you have great insight into this, and I appreciate it. And you're right. We need to understand these things, because sometimes it's too easy to forget how things went astray and how they started to go in the wrong direction. And if you understand in history how it happened, it gives you a lot more ability to prevent it from happening again.
Well, I appreciate the efforts, and I'm glad that there's consensus in the State House with respect to that. Well, Senator, you've given me a lot to think about here today, and us to think about. Is there anything else you want to run by?
Well, Rick, one last thing I would give an update, and that is this morning here in Gloucester, there was the release of a new report that I think people are going to want to pay a lot of attention to. And it was done by the University of Massachusetts Amherst, which, as many know, actually has a field station in the Lanesville section of Gloucester, in North Gloucester. And Dr. Katie Kahl, who is one of the leaders at that facility, worked with a whole group of people, and I won't name them all, but they produced something called the North Shore Blue Economy Report. And phase one of it was released today. And it's very, very exciting. We're going to be posting some information about this on my social media, on tartalk.com and on Facebook. And Rick, this is an incredibly exciting report for 21 communities on the North Shore, basically from Nahant, Swampscott, all the way up to the New Hampshire border, talking about how we can capture an incredible amount of potential in the marine sectors, in all of the marine sectors, from life sciences to wind energy, to ship construction, to fishing, and really an exciting report. And Lieutenant Governor Polito joined us this morning for the release of that report. And I hope we can talk about it more in the future, but I definitely wanted to get it on our radar screen for today.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Senator Tarr.
Thank you, Rick.